Hello! In my previous video I looked at these acrylic markers by Resin, and I did a couple of little drawings in my sketchbook. This kitty, not copied from the box or anything, and then some other little cats here which I made up. This is part 2, where I'm going to do something else with these markers, so you might want to check out that first video, but this is also standalone. I found a paint your own jack-o'-lantern kit, and I've already done it, so this is my official Halloween video for the year. So let's spookily get into it! And just to catch you up from the previous video, here's the jack-o'-lantern kit before I pulled it apart. It has 4 pumpkins, a paintbrush, and some paints. I found this in TK Maxx. It's for 6 years plus, so I'm in that range, yay! And here's the back of the box. 4 pumpkins with 2 face designs each, presumably made out of plaster or something else very similar to that, or just to get everything out of the box. It's a pretty basic kit, but it looks quite fun, and I thought it would be ideal to use with the paint pens, and of course the kit comes with these little paint pots and a little flat brush. Those are average at best, I guess, but the pumpkin figurines are actually really nice. I thought they were so cute, and they're just such a great size to be using with paint pens. It's just raw plaster. I don't think they've been painted with any gesso or anything like that. I was debating whether or not I was going to gesso them. In the end, I decided I was going to be lazy and not do this. We'll see if this pays off or not later on. But there's 2 of each design. I had no idea how I was going to decorate these. I was just going to wing that as well. And the instruction sheet wasn't much use either. Very basic in saying to use your imagination and customize your jack-o'-lantern to your liking. Well, that doesn't help, does it? Also, that jack-o'-lantern's been spelled wrong. I figured I'd flip it over and use it as a paint protector on my desk. I thought for my first one I'd go for a fairly traditional jack-o'-lantern design and go from there. I'm colouring in the facial features with yellow, so it's like there's a light shining inside it. I used a bright yellow, and then I'm going around with a slightly darker yellow just to give it a little more sense of depth. But really, I was just making this up. And then once I've done that, I'm going to paint the stem relatively realistically with a few browns and greens. The markers were going on top of the plaster really nicely without needing to have painted gesso, though I did change my mind a little bit on this later on, as you'll see. But I'm just finishing off this stem and adding in a bit of a darker brown so it's not all one light colour. I wasn't really using any references. In fact, all of the jack-o'-lanterns I did today are made entirely from imagination. I thought I'd add a dark red into the deepest recesses of the jack-o'-lantern and then use a variety of oranges working from dark to light in the central part of each segment, so it looks like there's light shining on it and it's more of a natural shadow and light situation. I noticed here that the paint was starting to soak in really quickly into the plaster and it was turning a little bit dull, plus I wasn't able to really blend the colours very well. It was a bit of a patchy mess here and I'm going, it's not quite as bright and vibrant as I want it to be. But I persevered for a bit longer and I'm just going to do the other side of the face and then I'll worry about the rest of the pumpkin. Taking care not to get the paint marker onto the yellow bits, although it was easy enough to touch up any little mistakes I made by going back in with yellow pen. So this is where I was looking at it thinking it's just a little bit dull, and I figured I might as well try the paint that came in the set. They had this incredibly bright orange, and it brushed on really easily. It was drying almost immediately when hitting the surface of the pumpkin, so it was actually soaking into the surface. So adding a base layer was a better idea, but I didn't use gesso, I'm just using the plain acrylic paint. And I'm going over all of my paint pen because I'm just going to restart the entire thing. I just wanted that really bright orange base, and then I can use the more subtle colours of the paint pen to go over the top and make it look a little bit more realistic. This worked so much better, and I did leave areas of that super bright orange shining in underneath, and I was able then to get some midtones and highlights plus some darker areas in the joins of the segments. Each pumpkin has 8 segments, just so you know. I counted them and I figured I could factor that in to my other pumpkins that I'll end up decorating. I did all 4 of them, would you believe? I just got on a roll with these. Once I got started on this basic one, then some other ideas came to me as I was working on this one. I think by adding in all of the little dash marks that I'm making here, it actually made the pumpkin look a bit more interesting rather than being one sort of flat colour, and I was just making it more of a mottled, speckledy pumpkin rather than a flat orange one. I was thinking that a lot of pumpkins and gourds do have this kind of markings on them, and so that's what I'm just going for. One of the dottier varieties out there. I think I used about 4 different oranges and the dark red just in the central parts, and those mixed in so well together with that bright orange base, adding in something that's not quite as bright over the top. Although speaking of bright, I did find the neon orange, and I'm actually adding in a little bit. You'll see that a bit more clearly later on in the video. I think I missed a bit of footage there, but I wanted to make that yellow really bright, so I'm using the neon yellow over everything, and then I'm just painting the base in a flat layer of that orange paint. I was going to do paint pens on this one, but I figured this looks perfectly fine. I'm not really going to see it except if I pick it up. I'm going to show you all of the finished pumpkins at the end of this video, so stick around for that. And now I'm moving directly on to the second pumpkin. I'm actually just using the white to paint a base layer over it, and I did this with all of the other ones too, because I did find that the paint pens performed better with that base layer underneath, and I'm just using those same yellow pens to colour in all of the eyes, nose and mouth once more, including the psychedelic yellow over the top of everything. And this one's going to be a Tim Burton inspired design, colouring alternating segments with purple and green. I figured those are good Helloween colours, and I'm just sticking with 1 purple and 1 green for this, because the orange one took ages with all of those pens, and I thought I'll go something a little bit more simple and just colour the entire segment with 1 pen and not worry too much about shading. I'll be adding some more detail onto this later though. I noticed as I was doing this that the pen nibs started to dry out a little bit, and so I kind of had to rest the pens a few times to let the ink flow back in. And another way I get around this is to dip just the very end of the pen in a tiny bit of water, and that will generally activate the acrylic paint and make it flow more smoothly through the pen nib. And now I'm on to the lime green colour. This is a really great one for the pumpkin, I think, and I really like this green and purple combination together. I think the green went on a little bit more easily than the purple did and didn't dry out quite so quickly, although I'm still getting a bit of streaks, and I did have to do a second coat on some of them just to make it look less patchy. That's pretty usual for acrylic anyway. There was a lime green in the little paint pots, but I decided not to use it because I didn't have a purple, and so I just figured I'm just going to use the pens for this entirely without having any base coat of that, and I had the white layer down anyway. Here's my second layer, and I'm also extending the design up into the stem because I thought I would just have everything the same 2 colours and not try and make the stem something different or brown. I just didn't think it would look quite right for this particular one. So instead it's going to be green and purple stripes, totally realistic. I found that decorating these pumpkins was a really relaxing task, and I painted all 4 of them in one day, which was quite nice. I just sat there listening to music and coming up with designs. Now I'm going in with some heavy black, and I'm going to actually draw stripes over this in that Tim Burton style, and this was so hard. I really struggled to get the lines straight, so they're looking pretty wobbly on a lot of these. It's mostly because it was really awkward to hold the pumpkin as well as move it around, and the paint wasn't drying quickly enough because the black is glossier than the other colours. But I got there eventually, and I thought it needed some white stripes as well, just to lighten it up and make it look a bit more interesting. These were pretty wobbly too, but I figured since it's hand painted, it's allowed to be a bit wobbly. It makes it more unique and hopefully adds a bit of character to it. I guess because all the lines are wobbly, it kind of is quite cohesive in the end. It wasn't like I drew any straight lines, I don't think, on this. On to pumpkin number 3. Sticking with the same yellows for the facial features, so that all 4 pumpkins kind of group together by having that one same thing. I could have left it with just the plain yellows, but the neon just gave it that little extra bright punch, which I really like, so I'm glad I added it in. Now for this one, I'm also going to colour each segment with a solid block. but this time a different colour for each segment, and I'm going for a rainbow again, inspired by my cats from the previous video. There are 8 segments, so I can fit Roigabiv in there, and I'm also going to add pink on the end. I thought that would go quite nicely with the red, so pink and red next to each other, it's a little bit clashing, but I actually think it's going to work out nicely. I'm also colouring in a matching stem, and also underneath colouring pie shape wedges for the base of it, which you'll see as I go along. I think with the oranges in this set, none of them were really that bright. They're all fairly muted except for the neon orange, so I just stuck with the brightest one that was in the set, and it's still not quite as bright as the red or the yellow next to it. It looks okay though, and I do like the colour. Next is this lovely yellow, which I was using to colour in the faces, and I made sure the yellow wasn't on the front of it so that it would just lose all of that detail. Then I've got this kind of bluey green. There were a few different greens in there, but I felt like this one would be the most fun to go with it, and you can see how I'm building up the wedges there and hopefully getting an even design underneath. This particular pen is very streaky, and it's the same one I used to colour in the rainbow cat. That definitely needs a second coat, and I got green on the yellow, but I'll just go over the top of that later. I had to touch up quite a lot of mistakes because I was leaning the pen on its side, and I kept managing to touch other segments that it was not supposed to be on, but you saw me easily covering up my little mistakes there. And just moving on now to a blue. This particular one matched the others in saturation and value. I didn't want to go too dark because of course I have indigo up next, and I was trying to figure out which blue to use for that one. I did find a darker blue which was suitable, but just finishing up with this segment, oh my goodness, this took a long time to do. They were very fiddly. But as I said, I really enjoyed doing this, and I'm hoping to find some more figurines to colour in like this. I will have to look on Amazon or somewhere like that to see what else is there. Of course, I went back to TK Maxx to see if they had anything else, and there was nothing left. So it's one of those places where you see it, you need to buy it straight away, otherwise it will be gone in the blink of an eye, never to come back again. I coloured in the indigo segment just with a darker blue, and now we're going for violet to finish up the Roigabiv part of the rainbow, and of course I've still got one segment left, so I'm going to need to colour that in. And I generally go for pink if I'm going to do an 8 colour rainbow, because that generally blends back in with red, and it's a nice middle colour in between the violet and the red. I generally prefer 8 colours in a rainbow, and you can see what I mean, that the pink really does go between the red and the purple quite nicely. It is a little bit lighter than the other colours, but I thought this particular shade was quite nice. I'm not too sure about red and pink together on the front of it though. I did spend quite a lot of time trying to decide which 2 colours should go on the face, but in the end I just went for the red and the pink, and I'm just going to have to live with it. And just because everything was looking a bit tatty, I'm going over all of the lines and seams with the Artex Gold pen. I feel this made a huge improvement to the entire design and really finished it off. I'm glad I went for the gold because it's super shiny. I think black would have been far too dominant on this, and it just looks really neat once I get all of that gold in there, covering up a few little extra mistakes there in the creases. I'd love to know if you've done any Halloween artwork or projects this year. I wasn't going to, but when I saw these, I just had to get them. They were so cute, and it really is fun decorating little figurines like this. Last pumpkin, just getting in the face first. This gives me more time to think about what I'm going to do. I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do for the last pumpkin, but I was determined to make some sort of design, getting in my neon yellow there. And even though I'd also painted this pumpkin white, I changed my mind and I'm actually going to cover the entire thing with the black paint. And I have to say that the paints they included in this set are actually really decent. You can see how dark this black is. It wasn't streaky or patchy. It was a really good one. And I'm always happy when kits like this have decent quality products in them. It's really frustrating when they're no good and you just can't get anything, even if you're a seasoned artist. But these were pretty easy to use. They dried quickly, although this black was taking longer to dry than the white did when I was painting it on. And then I remembered it's because I had white already on the pumpkin, so it wasn't being absorbed into the plaster this time, and that's why it took longer to dry. I was being so careful on the front here to not get any of that black onto the yellow parts, because black would be the most difficult to hide with yellow. Even the brush in the set is relatively decent. It's just a cheap little Taklon, but it held its own and I was able to paint everything on without having any issues. You can see that the paint though is chipping off, and so I had to work really quickly here. Once it had dried, I decided to go dotty on this. And I wasn't sure how well other colours would show up, so I'm going in with white first, so then I can put the colours over the top and they will show up more than sitting against black. I mean, a lot of the paints are very opaque, so it's not really a problem, but some of them are more transparent, and so when you put them against black, they just don't show up as much. This was a little bit fiddly, and of course it was taking ages for the white to dry. I was trying really hard not to smudge the dots, and very awkwardly tweezing it between my fingers. And I just really wanted to go in with all of the neon pens that were in this set, so I'm just randomly dotting the pink on, then I'll go in with orange, and then there's another reddy pink and a green and a yellow, so there's quite a few colours in there. I just thought this could look really cool once I've finished the entire thing. I wasn't too sure to begin with. I was thinking, is this going to look any good? And you'll see how matte that black paint has gone, so it's looking very dull, but I'll deal with that later. Firstly, I need to get all of the paint on and let it dry long enough so that nothing's going to smudge off. I had to paint around the edges of the base a few times because the black paint just kept chipping off. It was so annoying, and I'm just thinking, just stay on long enough for me to finish this thing, and then I can cover it all in a protective top coat. Oh, this dot one took ages and ages, and I did accidentally smudge a bit of the white here and there. I'm just going to cover it up with the neon paints. It'll be fine. I'd be curious to know if you have any design ideas for these pumpkins. How would you have decorated them? Not that I'm trying to steal your ideas or anything, but I do appreciate getting inspiration from you as well, because it's not always easy to come up with my own ideas. But I think I did pretty well today, and once I'd done the first pumpkin, the ideas flowed for the other ones, so it was actually a good day just doing one pumpkin, then coming up with a second idea, and so on. I'm just going around looking for the remaining white dots and covering them up with the neon yellow. This is just a completely random pattern of colours. I wasn't trying to make sure that no colours were next to each other. I painted a top gloss coat over all of the pumpkins, and now it's time to show you all 4 of my finished jack-o'-lanterns. Starting off with the first orange one, I actually really like how this turned out. It has the most traditional colours, but adding in that dashed and dot effect, it just makes it look a bit more interesting than a solid orange pumpkin, and I really like it. That gloss top coat finishes everything, and I signed it on the bottom, just this first one, because it is kind of a set of 4 of them. Let's move on to pumpkin number 2, and this is my Tim Burton inspired one. Very wobbly stripes, but I do love the bright colours, and I like that I added the white in with the black because it just breaks it up. Just the black stripes on their own would be a bit dull. I think the purple and green go really well together. I forgot to show this on camera, but I painted the base black for this one. Next is the rainbow jack-o'-lantern with gold stripes. Once again, I really like the colours, and I do like the red and pink together. I just couldn't decide at the time if it was a good idea, but when you just look at the whole thing together, I think it's really cohesive. I love the base of it as well. I'm so glad I thought to do the wedges, and also a matching stem, so that's a very colourful one. And last up is my very dotty neon one. This turned out so much better once I'd added that gloss top layer, and now the black is lovely and shiny as well. I kept this design very basic, but I think it's turned out really effective, and I love the bright neon dots against the black background. I completely forgot to put top coat on the base of the pumpkin, so I might do that later. I just have one more thing to show you. I found my UV torch, and when I shine it, all of the neon bits just light up completely, which is why I added it to their faces. I think it looks so cool. 2 in particular have a lot of neon on them. You can see the orange on the first pumpkin. It blends in with the other oranges when you're just looking at it, but add that UV light and it just pops out completely, along with the faces looking like they've been lit up from a candle inside. And the other one, of course, is my Dotty, and check this one out. I love it so much. It's so much fun. If you have neon paints, I highly recommend getting a UV light of some kind as well, so you can see them light up like this. It's really fun. Of course, it doesn't look like this in regular light, but it's that secret thing which just pops out when you put the UV on. And here are all 4 of them in place in my studio. I'll probably move these around, but I just thought I would keep them there for now. I also found this pufferfish figurine in a shop a while ago, and I'd love to paint that one too, maybe in a future video. But here's the 4 that I got done today. I'm so proud of these. I thought they turned out really well. And this is both of my videos done now. All of the fun I had with these acrylic markers. Thank you once again to Let's Resin for sending them to me. I'll link everything in the description below, except for the pumpkins. I don't know if I can find those again. It was just a random buy. Oh, and let's not lose the swatch card. I almost forgot to put that in there. Maybe I'll stick it into the lid or something. Which is your favourite jack-o'-lantern design? Let me know in the comments. And just in case you didn't watch the previous video, here are the rainbow cats which inspired that rainbow pumpkin. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up, a like and a hype, and you might want to click subscribe for more videos. Here's part 1 and another video to watch. I'm almost at the end of Bectober. I have one more page to fill on the back here, and I'll show you the finished book in the next video. Swatch you later. Bye!